There are so many examples of people trying to do mechanical analysis on YouTube, for instance. And for every exercise, for every body part, and so many times it's incorrect. I haven't seen all of them. I shouldn't even give an opinion like the majority of them are incorrect. That's stupid of me. But I have yet to see any that are correct in their entirety of the ones I've seen, which is limited. The biggest thing I've noticed about the analyses that they're attempting to create is that they teach them, they show them as if it's their original work, like they came up with it. You know, there's this thing, it was actually in a movie. There was a movie with a guy named Greg Kinnear, and the name of the movie was Flash of Genius. And that wasn't just, he was an inventor in the movie. In fact, it's a true story, and you can go read about it if you want to. The details of it aren't important, but there's a scene in it where he's an inventor and he's defending himself against a car company. I can't remember, Ford, General Motors, or whatever, because they stole something from him, an idea, and he defended himself. He had no money. But in court, he brings up this brilliant thing. In the old days, I mean, even before me, in patent law, apparently, I'm not a lawyer, but apparently, according to this movie, and you can look up this term, Flash of Genius, if there was an argument over the original creation of a patented product or whatever, they would actually, way back when, ask each person who pretended to be the inventor or claimed to be the inventor to explain the origins of it. How did they come up with it? What was the moment that the idea started? What precipitated it? And what were the catalysts that kept furthering the idea and allowed you to evolve it? And when did those happen? And the aha moments is really what it is. And that was actually called back then, apparently, when was your flash of genius? So what I really want to do here is not pretend anything I'm going to present is genius, but I do want to show you the origins of some things. Some things that you and a lot of people think are just now common knowledge, or that, wow, look at that guy and what he's drawing on that board on YouTube, etc. This is where it all started for me. Specifically, Pec Mechanics. And I'm going to tell you why that was of interest to me at the time. Very, very important kind of necessity. This is the mother of invention kind of idea. Like, I didn't feel like I had a choice but to figure this out. And more specifically, I don't mean Pec Mechanics in general. Now, this is a somewhat heavy, too many words for a title type of title, but the origin of superior view analysis. Now, if you understand kinesiological terminology, superior means from above, a certain viewpoint, much like a lateral view, an AP, anterior posterior view, that type of thing. It doesn't mean superior as in the best. So, you know, with everything I present, we kind of need to shift gears for so many of the terms towards what we're talking about, the context of the human body, etc. So, I just for fun, you know, took a screenshot of several. I think I Googled bench press instructions, and one time I Googled bench press analyses and stuff like that. But this is interesting because in the beginning, in the old days, if you had a book that said how to do an exercise, there was a start and a finish, and every single picture of someone doing a bench press was a side view. And there's even some in here. These are always, I tell you what people love to take pictures of if they're selling equipment. Or in this case, trying to make something look cool. They take a 3/4 view, sometimes they call it, or an angled view, because it's prettier. Nobody likes a straight-on side thing. Have you ever noticed that? They don't want a straight-on face thing when someone's doing an exercise. There's almost always kind of an angle to it, because it's aesthetically more appealing, supposedly. I don't know. But anyway, it also makes it incredibly hard to analyze anything, because without looking from a more precise direction for precise reasons, you don't necessarily see what you want to see. Now, this is interesting, more side view, more great animations. These guys are great, and here's nobody just selling benches, and here's a drill press. So apparently their website guys are awesome, because when you Google bench press, you get these guys that sell or make drill presses. Well, I think it's kind of funny. This is an interesting view to me. This is kind of where my brain started going by accident. It's where I went by accident. Now, this particular website or picture is representing, you're supposed to click on it, how to perform a decline chest press. So it's just a stock photo or something they had. It has nothing to do with the article, and within the article they don't show this view anymore because you can't see a decline from here really. But the point of view, this is a superior view, is what that's what I was referring to before. So you keep going, and you got your side view and your traditional, here's your arc of motion, and here's an interesting kind of showing a bone inside of there, and the bone itself doesn't help you do anything. In fact, it almost kind of looks like a femur. This is an interesting though. Here's another superior view along with a what I would call an anterior to posterior view, an anterior view while someone's laying down, if you can kind of see what they've attempted to draw for us there. But this is not uncommon if you're going to show grip width on a bar for whatever, powerlifting. I don't know what these guys are talking about here, but you'd have to show it from this point of view. It's a great view for looking at grip width, but while they're using that view for that purpose, there's an opportunity to look for something very different, to see something going on very different there. And here's the final one I'm going to show you. Again, we're getting the superior view. These guys, now this is pretty typical of social media stuff. Most people look at this and they go, wow, that's cool. Accounting for horizontal forces, this is only vertical. The problem is they're not showing forces of resistance. They're showing the direction of shove. This person's shoving up. This is not, you can't draw a resultant of a shove through this joint and say anything. It doesn't show us anything. This is exactly backwards from what they should be doing. They should be showing us directions of resistance, vertical and horizontal, because that's actually what they're attempting to do. Once again, sorry guys, not my fault. Not really trying to beat them up. I'm just kind of saying, people are getting so close. The problem with social media is they're putting it out there. The unassuming, the people who don't know the difference are going, wow, that's cool. Maybe trying to learn something from it. And what these people are really doing here is exposing their, I want to say ignorance, really I hope they're on a path of coming to understand it, but they're in the middle and they've kind of just exposed that they're in the middle of it, that they're not there yet. So yeah, they've exposed a relative amount of ignorance. But I'm going to take you way back, and you can tell by the clothes, it's so funny. I'm not in this particular picture, but this is the first gym I ever went to. It was about the only one around back in later 70s, 77. Before that, I kind of had to work out at home. But it's kind of a dump, and it's the way I think everybody should start working out, in a smelly, non-air conditioned, non-heated dump. It's just awesome. And you meet quite a few characters in there. But this is going to end up talking about pecs and the bench press here in a minute, so I thought that was an appropriate picture. This was a tough gym. This is how they spot you, right? It's like the WWE of spotting or something. Yeah, a bunch of goofballs. This was the new gym when a friend of mine opened the first Golds here. I built all the equipment for it. But it was a little kinder gym. They just stepped in your hand. They didn't really try to pin you or anything. And here was the owner. He was a good friend of mine, and it was the Golds in town back then in like '83. And so the guys, the wrestlers, I mentioned WWE, WWF. You got Jake the Snake and you got Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and they would show up at the gym and work out. They're super nice guys, and by the way, they were completely torn up. The poor guys could barely work out. What they're doing is not fake. While the winner may be planned, these guys are killing each other, or killing themselves, I should say. Anyway, so I need to show you this for a reason. I'd won the state title, and I was a physical therapist. A couple years before I won, a couple years prior, I graduated from school. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I thought I should know something. People thought I should know something. They would ask me for advice, and here's all I knew. I wasn't any good by any serious standards of bodybuilding. Not so bad for state level way back then, as long as I wasn't in California or New York or New Jersey or something like that. But the thing is, I could do anything for my legs and they would grow. It just didn't matter. It just didn't matter. Conversely, I never felt my chest ever when I was working out. So the thing I did feel, the thing that did happen, was I had stabbing pain right here, right there. If you were to point to a muscle, you would say anterior delt, but it was not that vast. It was like an ice pick, and one side a little worse than the other, but on both sides. By the time I was about 6 months after winning and having a trophy, which, you know, in our world, if you look good, you must know something. All I knew was this: if I really knew what I was doing, I wouldn't hurt the way I hurt. I got, you know, you go from a 400-pound bench or whatever back then, I don't even remember, to barely being able to do 135 or whatever. We didn't use collars, so you just added up the 45s. Yeah, why am I hurting? Why after I got this trophy and I can't lift anything because of pain? No matter what I tried, no matter who I listened to, no matter what pros I worked out with, no matter what, couldn't change as much up here as I wanted to, could kind of do anything for my legs. So there's some, go back to genetics, go back to all this stuff, but the big thing was necessity, the mother of invention. The idea that I had to figure this out. Because I wasn't going to quit, you know? Now, not necessarily going to keep competing, but this was my thing. So what I ended up doing was going into the gym one day and not even planning to work out, which you just didn't do, right? We were so quote-unquote overtrained, non-recovered, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, I go in the gym and I sit and stare at people. It's kind of stalker-like. Sorry, we didn't even have that word back then, I don't think. Doing bench presses. You know, those were the centerpiece of the gym. Everybody bench pressed. I don't care who you were, and that's what you walk in the door, bench presses. But right behind them were a couple incline presses with spotter stands. You know, you step up on there. And so I just sat my butt down on the spotter stand, staring at the head end, a superior view of people bench pressing. And I did it for about 3 or 4 hours. And it must have been a Monday, because those things were just like one person after another, you know? And I started to see something. A couple things. Number one, I don't want to give you a percentage, but let's say if I watched 30 people, 28 of them looked exactly the same. Very similar in structures, very similar in the way they performed this thing. Here's what I mean. I saw this. I saw relatively thin, front to back thin, not thick rib cage people bench pressing. And I started noticing from school, I don't think we learned moment arm in school. We learned force angle. But I started to notice, I was seeing inside a bone and a glenohumeral joint and a rib cage and attachments, and I started to see these lines in my head. And it's not only when people would go through a range of motion, but when they would do things like the other most common thing I saw besides structural commonalities and or differences from that view that I'd never seen before. This was 1985. Every one of these thinner guys, now they didn't have to, for some reason every one of them did, protract significantly. I mean, like a lot. Now there were a couple other guys where I went, wow, that does not look like what everybody else is doing. Everybody else looked like they were kind of, you know, if you're just watching the bar go up and down, everybody looks kind of the same as long as it's not doing this stuff, you know what I mean? But it was interesting because two out of all those guys, they were similar in structure rib cage wise. Now one guy had everything, he was pretty freaking big, and all he did was smoke pot, but he looked awesome. So I don't know if there's correlation or causation there, and that's a joke, okay? But when he did this thing, he maintained the retraction that I came to recognize in powerlifters. And So did this other guy who pretty much only had a chest and relatively thin arms and legs. So I was like, wait a minute. And that's where I started noticing some things. People with really thick rib cages not only didn't have to go as far down. We think everybody touches their chest, everybody did the same range of motion. Well, it becomes pretty obvious that if you're thinner, you're going through a very different shoulder excursion than someone that's thicker because the bar stops you. It's considered a legal full rep in a competition, but this person is having very different shoulder forces, very different internal scenario for the shoulder in this guy. And I'm not saying good or bad about anything right now. I'm saying this is what I started to recognize. That's all I'm telling you. I'm not teaching you anything right now. This is purely about the day I recognized this in 1985. If you ask me for a date, I can't tell you because I don't remember what yesterday's date was. And I can't remember that because I don't know today's, okay? So I tried to take these two pictures and line up these guys relative to their scapula, backside, laying on the bench, and give you a better, because this is old. You're still frames from old video. It's bad. And there's the differences while they're both playing by the rules, even though neither of them, quite frankly, was ever involved in powerlifting. So why did they have to play by the rules? Why couldn't they play by the rules of their body, especially if their body was talking to them maybe like, wow, what you're doing, maybe influencing the pain you have, maybe. You start to see things like this. This is, you could call it force angle. This guy who goes lower has what has become a force angle that's pretty darn far away from 90. Bigger is not always better. 90 is optimal, you know that, I hope. The moment arm, ultimately, that is the measurement of torque, is much shorter here than over here. So you can see that range of motion. This guy could have stopped up here and had a very similar moment arm, like this guy, to this guy. But that was a choice, and again, not good or bad, it's a recognition. These are the things going on inside of us. It was this type of thing where I went, man, I need to look at every exercise, and eventually I came to not look at exercises, I came to see forces and structures and lines of pull, and we just call those exercises, the inside, if you will. And then started to look at what happened? People do this. Well, resistance is going down. When he protracts, this pec is actually, would be pulling down. It doesn't need to do anything here. It's virtually off, relatively speaking, because it's now actually a retractor. It's no longer a protractor. It's no longer really stabilizing even in the co-contractive orchestrated scenario around the joint. And I'm assuming the brain says, I don't need you for that. Now, interestingly, over here, the people that maintained some degree of retraction and how much should never, like anything, should never be protocolized or choreographed, meaning should everybody do the same? Probably on the stage in a Broadway musical, we'd like for them to do the same thing so they don't look like idiots. Here, it needs to be very individual. Goal, structures, etc. Tolerances, right? Progression of learning, whatever. The bottom line is, this is an entirely different scenario. And even though the weight might be balanced or close to zero moment arm, doing this, there's a significant recognition, experiential recognition of maintaining contraction, as well as, EMG. It's one of the things it's kind of good for, is to show us if something's getting an electrical piece of information to it, being called upon. So anyway, those are some things I started to see, and I didn't know what quite to do with them yet. But later, 5 years later, 4 years later, I got a chance to speak at my first national presentation, and it was for what I'm told is the first, I don't know what else was going on in the country, but I'm told it was the first personal training certification. It was one of them. And I'm showing you this for a couple reasons. I didn't actually do this particular presentation in '89. It was not till '90 when I got more time, when I took more time, I don't know, from the schedule. But By the way, for those of you that don't know, this is an overhead projector. Say it with me, overhead. We didn't have PowerPoint, boys and girls. There was no animation of anything. You're sitting here and you're drawing, and you know, those of you that are closer to my age are going, why is he explaining this? Go talk to someone that's 30, they don't have a clue about this. So the other reason I wanted to show you this, I'm not entirely proud of it, but I thought you would find it hilarious that my mullet almost took over the entire overhead. Now I'm kidding, and that's not actually a shadow of my hand over here, but like, holy crap, right? I must have really strong neck muscles because the weight of this hair back here. So anyway, if you get a close-up of that, you start to notice that I was attempting, very poorly, but attempting to draw rib cage, scapula, arm, force angles, / moment arms. And then here's a thinner person. And so you can see that in 90, I was getting fairly accomplished at talking about it. When I listen to this old video, it is excessively embarrassing, but the general principles are there, no matter how crummy I was at trying to communicate them. But this is, oh, I just wanted to, I guess that's the picture for the hair. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, you're like damaged for life, right? This was more like 94. This was in Las Vegas, same organization. I guess we stepped it up. They made us wear a suit or something. And you know, this was a slide because what we learned to do was just draw the thing and take a picture of it, you know, as slide film. And again, 35 millimeter slide. I don't know if people know what that is. So yeah, so here's my attempt at presenting it, and the evolution of it. Better drawing, more clear, 94 again. And this is showing how the range affects not only the mechanics, but also here, this was meant to be, that's not a pec. This is one rib cage and one pec. This is another rib cage, the thicker person, and the other pec. So this is more of a comparison of these two lines. That's really the point here. And the idea that even if anybody goes to the same range, the person that has this rib cage shape inherently, or does something to maybe augment it through the execution, has almost double the mechanical ability. And there's really no way to deny that. Some people, I don't know, I hear now they're like, oh, what you do with your shoulder blades doesn't change things, and none of this changes things. But people should say that they don't see how it changes things. Because when you can't see it, and you say, therefore it doesn't occur, that's not really A, scientific, or B, sign of intelligence, right, or honesty. So this was the other one showing if you were a little bit retracted, nobody can, you know, if you can retract severely like this, well, you're never going to get your arms to the front. So it's not a full retraction thing. And that's the problem. Just like people thinking, is it good or is it bad? Is it right? Is it wrong? Should I or shouldn't I? Most of these things in exercise, when we're looking at them with honest, objective analysis, it's a matter of degrees. It's a matter of degrees. And it is, again, very what? General? Same for everybody? Individual, right? But this is showing, again, very clearly that even though this person's arm would be straight out, in other words, not as deep in the range of motion as this person, I want you to look at the mechanical ability here. When this person protracts, it's virtually the same mechanical ability, or I should say loss of mechanical ability. Whereas this person stays retracted and their arm's straight out, their mechanical ability is very different. Now that's important because people look at range grossly, and this is a big theme. You've got to see the inside. The fact that the arms are straight out does not constitute a decent measurement of range of motion for mechanical analysis. That is the way flat earth people see things. Oh, your arms are straight out. I see how deep you went. No, you don't. Because if these are different, it's not the same range at the joint. And I hope you can see that. And again, I'm not trying to teach you anything. I'm trying to get you to see how understanding, observation, and an ability to think deeper, how it can evolve. And by doing this, you can, over time, get to where you don't fall prey to people telling you, do or don't, good or bad. You can make legitimate, objective decisions that still need to be weighed against someone's tolerance, regardless of what appears to be a good idea mechanically, right? So this is something you may want to go study. Here's 94, and by the end of the year I'd altered my presentation. I think I started playing with my Macintosh SE, and if you've seen that Steve Jobs movie, that's the first one that they, the first one in that movie, that little box with a screen this big that you, but they were, getting some pretty decent programs, and I was able to do that stuff. And it's the same thing I was just showing you. So hopefully I evolved in my ability to show it. And this was, I started trying to show it with people. And I already showed you this picture, but that picture came from 94 also, roughly the time I was doing this thing, part of the same presentation actually. But can you see that these are just like 4x6 photographs that I had to stick side by side and then take another picture of? That's the only way we could do that, folks. It wasn't till the end of, close to the end of the 90s when PowerPoint became a thing, and you couldn't do much, but write some words and make an outline. And it was interesting, given that now you can make extravagant animations and everything. So this idea here, this whole thing, all along the way I started making these things. Not just to see a fan-shaped muscle, but to be able to lay in class, like when we were doing practicals, to put it on different individuals so they could, am I messing with my microphone? So they can start to see angles, if they were built a certain way. Could they kind of start to see it from a superior view, which I can't show you without levitating, and I'm not good at that. What would happen if I was here, or here, or here, or here? What happened? So it was our attempt at showing you the inside with, these things they make little, they blow them up and make little poodles with and stuff like that. Over the years, I just kind of gave you a preview of what I'm getting ready to show you. Last year I made this, and I'm now showing it on video and showing it to you now because it's under protection finally from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, not trademark, the patent side of the deal. So, and the goal was, I showed, I took a picture of this and sent it to a friend, and I didn't have the ribs painted on there yet. And the guy goes, "What are you doing, making lamps and lampshades now?" And I'm going, "Yeah, thanks, Chris." And so the thing that I was trying to do, and this evolved also, all I really wanted to do was make something where I could attach, see the differences in thickness if I was to take a superior video of it, and I attach individual fibers in an attempt to show some stuff. And along the way I was like, man, it'd be so cool if I could show like really, really different rib cage thicknesses. So I don't know. I need a life maybe is my problem. But yeah, so, and then, I made arms you can put on and you can move the scapula, and I just needed to be able to show the stuff I've always talked about. And I really honestly was so incredibly tired, annoyed by static things, attempts. So, this thing's now in our fun videos, and I did this was not a split screen, it's just that thing right there, and I've got someone helping me over there, and it's kind of hard to get it all together when we're showing it, but you can see how, I'm just going to scoot through this, I'm not going to play any video. You can see how at some points in the range, there's a dramatic loss of mechanical ability. That person with a thicker rib cage over there, has a little bit different mechanical ability preserved. So that's kind of fun to take a look at, compare them at the same time. What happens if we're at the top? How much mechanical ability is preserved? Just kind of interesting. Might help us make decisions. Now I protract mine further than the other person did. But it's kind of nice to see once again, without just the crummy pictures I was showing you, that if you get over here, come on, catch up, little guy. It's kind of not keeping up with me. Come on, we're not over there. Anyway, there. If you protract, It's trying to keep up. So if I protract this thing, you could probably see it. I guess I'm not really trying to get super. So if I get to here, you can start to see that while you're not very deep, you're not getting a good stretch, you've actually got, your pec's got a pretty crummy ability. And no, this is not exact. No model is exact. Someone out there is going, well, that's not the way it really looks. I know. But the thing I'm trying to show, it does a pretty darn good job of displaying, of exhibiting, and being able to manipulate it to see what kind of happens if we do this, and what should I consider based upon, I got everybody I work with is built like this. I don't have any of these people. That's a really awesome thing to be able to show with a model, to give kind of a, here, it's real deal type of thing. So, and from the side view, now this is a split screen. So I had, you know, with this model, I had one still coming from the superior view and one from a lateral view. And that's fun to see this, not just where in this thickness of rib cage, wherever I had it set, the bottom of the sternal fibers, the lower pec, its angle and how different it is from this guy, and how, you know, but yet, even though it has a better force angle for producing motion than this guy does, by almost double, it's not in the plane. So it's not the same. We can't, by looking at things at the same time from multiple views, it's easy to take a look at one thing from one view and go, see how good it is? Yeah, but from over here, it's maybe not quite the best at that compared to its little compadres here. So I think it's really fun to do this, and I kind of like making stuff. So here you can see what happens if you breathe, or if you, trying to show somewhere, like if you're at different planes, come on, try to catch up there. Like if you're up here, that this guy is not pulling in the same plane, although the thicker the rib cage, and the video's not on, it's just trying to catch up to me scrolling across. But you can see that in a video where we're taking our time, if someone was moving in this plane, this has a very different influence from when it was, if it's going to cooperate now, from when it was maybe down somewhere, down there. So that's a very different scenario right there when this arm's up and that guy's pulling a somewhat different direction. But that stuff's really, really valuable and really fun. And the reason I'm, again, telling you this is because while I have no doubt that people are going to start making those, just like they started making my squat model, but again, they should consider the legalities of it now. I've learned to, you know, not show my updates. And when you see the squat model and the updates, you're not even going to recognize it. But the value of this is huge. And I got to tell you, I have yet to meet it. Most of the people doing analyses, plural, on the on YouTube, they were not even in junior high during my flash of awareness. So anyway, just some things that you might be interested in. And as I said, this was the start of sitting back and actually attempting to look inside, which made me basically throw away everything I thought I'd known about exercise. I had to start with a clean slate. And it was one of the most empowering things that I did and continue to try to do. It's a never-ending process. You know, I had every intention of saying something. I'm going to throw it in now. But every time I do something like this, especially if I'm saying, listen, here's an objective way to analyze this. These are objective truths. Now that is how we apply them, who we apply them on, you know, how are we going to teach it? Does it matter for certain individuals? All of those things are case by case, and those aren't even worth arguing about. And this is where I'm going with this. I'm extending an invitation to anybody who disagrees with the analysis. I think it's childish to start the social media comment, sorry for lack of better words, pissing matches that never really help anybody understand anything, that never really, you know, nobody enters those things to have their mind changed. Nobody enters those things to actually learn anything. So if someone disagrees, I invite you to come and let's have a little analysis off, meaning, you know, like a spelling bee, or, you know, riff off, or all these little competitions that are just impromptu and that kind of thing. But yeah, because that's helpful. And if someone, I don't know, if someone disagrees and go, no, I was doing that long before 1985. I figured that out long before then. And it's entirely possible. We didn't have social media back then for people to present it. And if you think you were presenting it before I first did nationally in 89 or 90 or whatever, or it's just an invitation I'm offering you. There's absolutely nothing to be gained from going straight to the social media and the keyboard and all that stuff and disagreeing. If you feel strongly enough about it to write it, then be brave enough to come present it, because I am more than willing, given the day and age. Maybe logistically, flying from the UK might not be the best thing. So there's other ways, obviously, to do such a version of a face-to-face conversation and discussion. And people would probably benefit from seeing and listening to that type of presentation. And that's all I'm trying to do, is A, help people find the original source for some things. Maybe they want to hear someone who's been evolving the presentation and the understanding for 30 years, who's made more mistakes than most people out there on social media will ever have an opportunity to make, just because of experiences and vetting and that kind of stuff. So anyway, long story made longer again. The opportunity is there. I'm extending you the invitation. And yeah, let's try to grow up from the cowardly social media comment version of addressing things. Cool?